So let's get into literal equations. We will be using the skills we've been learning in the previous videos about solving equations in this concept. A literal equation is an equation that contains more than one variable. So in the past, we have been solving for x, or we've been solving for our variable and getting our variable to equal a number. Well, that's not going to be the case in this concept. Instead, we're going to get our variable equal to an expression. And that's helpful in many real-world applications to get something alone in a complex equation so that it makes it easier to simplify expressions and to evaluate things. So the first thing we have to do, which is what we were doing when we were solving equations, is figure out what's happening to our given variable. So if I wanted to solve c equals 2 pi r, which is actually the circumference formula for a circle, if I wanted to solve that for r, I want to get the r by itself. Well, what's happening to the r? It's being multiplied by 2 pi. So if I look down at example 2 and I wanted to solve for r, so remember we're trying to get the r by itself. If I wanted to solve for r, I would need to undo that multiplication, so I would need to divide both sides by 2 pi. And then r would equal c divided by 2 pi. We got our r alone. That's all I needed to do. So you see how we're not necessarily going to get a nice number at the end of this. We're going to get our variable equal to an expression. In number 2, we have a equals b plus cp. And I want to get the p by itself. So what's happening to p? Well, p is being multiplied by c and then added to p. So if I actually wanted to solve for p, so I'm going to circle p because that's what I'm trying to solve for. If I wanted to solve for that, then I would use the same strategies that I have been with solving equations. So the first thing I would do is subtract b from both sides. So then I would get a minus b equals cp. And then I want to get the p by itself, and c is multiplying it. So to undo that, I divide both sides by c. So p equals a minus b divided by c. And then to finish this out on our third and final example here, I want to get the x by itself. So circle your x because that's what you're trying to get by itself. So what's happening to x? X is being added to 3. And then that sum is being divided by m. So if I wanted to solve for x, so circle your x because that's what you're trying to solve for. So if I were to solve this equation, I would want to get the top by itself. So I need to multiply both sides by m. And when I do that, x plus 3 equals, well, what's negative 1 times m? That's negative m. And then to get the x totally by itself, I need to subtract 3 from both sides. So x is going to equal negative m minus 3. So if we look at these 3 examples, we are solving the same exact way we have been, but it's a little bit more abstract. All right, we're not going to get a nice number at the very end. We're going to get an expression. So you're solving it the same way. It's just that answers might look a little bit more complicated. So, got 4 for you to try right here. Go ahead and practice it. Reference the 3 that I worked out here. Ask yourself, what's happening to my variable that I'm trying to solve for, and how do I undo it? So practice these. So here you go. Here's the worked out practice problems. The only way to get good at these is to practice, so make sure you double check your answers against mine. If you have any questions, let me know, either when I see you in class or email me. Make sure each of these is a little bit different in how you solve it. So identify the variable you're trying to solve for. So that's why I always circle it the first time I see it. And then I solve for it. I want to get it by itself. So I'm going to solve using the same strategies we have been when there were numbers involved. Okay? So the reason we use this is so to make our lives a little bit easier when I'm solving. So the formula to compute a person's BMI, which is the body mass index, is B equals 703 times the quantity W divided by H squared, where B represents the BMI, W is the person's weight in pounds, and H represents the person's height in inches. So let's say we knew specific parts of this person, but we didn't know their weight. So I could start with this equation, and I could get the W by itself. So now I'm going to solve for W. And so that's what I highlight. If I wanted to rewrite this, because 703 is multiplying W over H squared, I can rewrite this as 703W divided by H squared. So our strategy is still to get that W by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is multiply both sides by H squared. It's going to cancel it out on the right-hand side. So I'm going to get BH squared equals 703W. And then my last step to get the W all by itself is just to divide both sides by 703. So that's going to go away on the right-hand side. So I'm going to get W equals BH squared divided by 703. And then I can use that if I wanted to know the weight of a person who is 64 inches tall, so that's their height, and their body mass index is 21.45, so that's their B. Then all I would have to do is in my equation that I just solved for, W equals their B, which is their body mass index, so that's 21.45, times their height, which was 64 squared, all divided by 703. So then, all I need to do is type that into my calculator. So when I type that into my calculator exactly as I see it, so order of operations, I'm going to take 64 squared, I'm going to multiply that by 21.45, and then I'm going to divide that by 703. The weight of that person is going to be 124.98 pounds if I round to the nearest hundredth place. Okay? So that's one reason why we use literal equations, to help make our solving a little bit easier, especially when we're dealing with complex formulas. So go ahead and try this one. This practice problem, make sure you read it, you understand it. You're solving for G. So this one is a really interesting problem, okay? And it's good test or quiz problem. Your G is on the denominator. So we recently did something in a video, maybe if I put E over 1, that might give you an idea of how to solve for G when it's on the denominator. So go ahead and try that out, and then pause the video, restart it, and the work will be there for you. Alrighty, so this example will close out this video. We wanted to solve for G, so we know that the fuel's economy, E, is given by the formula M over G, where M is the number of miles driven, G is the number of gallons of fuel used. So that's my equation. I wanted to solve for G, which is on the bottom. So I showed you two different ways here. In the orange and the blue, since it's a ratio, equal to a ratio, it's a proportion, you could cross multiply and then solve. Or you could just multiply both sides by G and then divide by E. Both are technically doing the same thing. Both are valid ways to get the G by itself. So you get this equation right here, G equals M, the miles driven, divided by E, which is the fuel economy. And you can use that to solve for the amount of gallons that Estancia used when she drove 1,477 miles in a car with a fuel economy of 26 miles per gallon. All right, so double check your work on that. After that, you can work on the practice problems. You can ask me questions. You can get ready for the next assessment. Just make sure you ask me questions if you have them. All right, I'll see you when I see you.